Yo, what is up guys? Today I'm going to be talking about the best solo queue agents to play in ranked. Please make sure to like and subscribe, and share this video with people who you think it'll be helpful to. Now, there are going to be two parts of the ranking. So first of all, I'm going to give each agent a solo queue score. Now what that means is that how good they are in solo queue. Doesn't really have to do with anything with agent performance or anything. Just how good they are in solo queue in general, no matter how powerful they are. And next, it's how good the actual agent is. This means how overpowered the agent is. Doesn't matter if the agent is bad in solo queue, good in solo queue. It's just how good they are. Now, first off, I'm gonna talk about Breach. Now, in my opinion, I'm just gonna spoil it for you. Breach is the worst solo queue agent. I know you're gonna say, bro, but what? He's really good, but still. His abilities are insanely hard to do in solo queue because you need to have a lot of coordination. For example, his flashes are some of the blind you for so long, and also there's not really any indication of it. Unless you tell your teammates that you're gonna flash and ping exactly where you're gonna put the flash to, you're almost always gonna blind your teammates, and that is a pretty bad blind. It does a lot. The duration is extremely long. Next, now his flat, his fault line and then his ultimate, those can hurt your teammates too, so you need to coordinate them. Not only that, but it's extremely hard to coordinate. You have to know the specific callouts and stuff, because I guess you could just ping the direction of where it's gonna go, but sometimes in a pinch that'll take too long, and if you don't coordinate it, you're almost always gonna damage your teammates. I mean, not damage, but you're not always dizzy. I don't really know what it's called, but Then finally is aftershock. Now, this really doesn't have that doesn't really require a lot of coordination. The main thing about it is that when you're clearing it out, you gotta you still gotta tell your teammates, cause I don't know, let's say that someone was in that angle that you just used it on, and then they peek out, right? Your teammates are you don't want to catch your teammates off guard or anything. So it might be best to call it out, but you don't have to. Now overall, for Breach's solo queue score, I'd give him around a 2 to 3 out of 10. The only thing that you could use his ability that without coordination is his aftershock, and in my opinion it still requires a little bit of coordination. So, but he's a pretty good agent overall. He's not insanely overpowered, but he's not bad either. So I'm gonna put him in B tier for now. Okay, so next I'm gonna talk about Brimstone. Now, in my opinion, Brimstone is an insanely good solo queue agent. Most of his abilities don't really require a lot of coordination, but even though he's pretty good in solo queue, I'd give him around a 9 to 10. The only really thing that that requires coordination is his ultimate, and then his smokes obviously requires a little bit of coordination, so maybe not a 10 or maybe a 9 to an 8 solo queue score. But overall, he's a pretty top tier B agent maybe in terms of performance. So for now, I'm just gonna put him in A tier because he's pretty good in solo queue. Next, I'm gonna talk about Cypher. Now, Cypher is pretty good, but his trips and a lot of his abilities require a decent amount of coordination to be to play them effectively. Especially his tripwires. You might want your teammates to tell you if where you want to put the tripwires and stuff. Let's say you wanted to save them for post plant, or if you just want to put them on flank. That's important to know. Also, his ultimate can be a little bit hard to get value with if you're not coordinated, even though it could tell all the info and stuff. You still have to coordinate what you're gonna do after that. Obviously, you can't just take that info and I mean, it is still useful, but it's much better when you coordinate something after his ultimate. And Cypher he's a pretty A tier agent, I guess. And his solo queue score, I'd give him around a 6. So for now, I'm gonna put him at the top of B tier. Oops, wait. Yeah, the top of B tier. Next off, we have Jett. In my opinion, not just Jett, but duelists are the best solo queue agents. They're the agents that do not require much coordination, that you could pop off with easily and carry games. And Jett is definitely not different. Like Jett is not only is Jett an insanely good agent, like overall, she's an insanely good solo queue agent. Almost none of her abilities require any coordination with your team. You could just like, I don't know, turn off your mic, like do whatever you want, like just vibe out with her. I mean, I'm not telling you to do that. Like it would be fine, I guess. You still gotta make callouts, but she does not require like any coordination at all to play. She's a 10 out of 10 solo queue agent, and in my opinion, she's one of the best agents in the game. And that's why, in my opinion, she is the best solo queue agent in the game. Next off, we have Omen. Now, Omen is even after Omen's nerfs, he's a pretty good agent, but in my opinion, he does take like a little bit of coordination to play effectively. Like for example, you could paranoia your teammates pretty easily, so you gotta tell like your teammates like where you're gonna flash. And not only that, but his teleportation like ability, like sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes it requires a decent amount of team coordination, because like it could be easily telegraphed sometimes. Like you might want your teammates to make like distractions for you. Also, not only that, but his ultimate does also require a decent bit of team coordination. But again, these are only like a decent bit of team coordination abilities. Like it doesn't require like all team coordination like breach or anything. And like you could still get a lot of value with him even if you don't coordinate your abilities that much. So his solo queue score, in my opinion, is probably going to be a 7. He's slightly better than Brimstone. I mean, yeah, slightly better than Brimstone. So I'm just going to put him like right behind Brimstone because his solo queue score is worse. Next, I'm going to talk about Phoenix. Now, Phoenix is a really good agent. Like he's insanely good and reliable, but his flashes, you need to call them out like similar to breaches, except his breaches, I mean his flashes aren't that as bad as breaches, but you still need to call them out. Also, I always hate it when Phoenixes molly me, like use their wall in like a stupid spot, and it's really annoying. So it does require a decent amount of team coordination to play effectively. And like also you could pretty easily harm your teammates if you don't like coordinate your plays and stuff. He's a much more team based character. That's why I'm gonna give him a 6 out of 10 solo queue score. But just because he's so good, in my opinion, he's just a reliable pick, and his ultimate is one of the best in the game, if not the best in the game. I'm gonna put him at the top of A tier. Next off, we have Raze. Now Raze, she's a pretty good agent. I mean, she doesn't really require a lot of coordination, except that you might not want to nade your teammates, or like some of her abilities can damage teammates. Also, sometimes her satchels can like get accidentally like hit your teammates, and that could be bad, but that usually doesn't happen. So for her solo queue score, I'd give her around an 8 out of 10, just because you could like damage your teammates pretty easily. But she's like a top of B tier agent, so for now I'm just gonna put her at the bottom of A tier. Okay, next off we have Sage. Now, in my opinion, Sage is really not that good of an agent anymore. I'm not going to say that she's bad just because of her res ability, but she's really not that good anymore. Like, after all the Sentinel nerfs and after all the nerfs to her, like, specifically, she just dropped in power level so much. Also, like, in solo queue, you could, like, easily, like, wall off your teammates and, like, slow them on accident. Not only that, but you have to choose like who to heal and who to res, and that could kind of get annoying sometimes. So she does require like some team coordination. But the main thing is that your solo queue teammates might get mad. You like don't res them or something. So that also plays a factor into the score in my opinion. So she's probably gonna be like a 5 to 4 out of 10 solo queue agent. I'm gonna put her at the bottom of B tier. Next off, we have Sova. Now, Sova, I know you're gonna disagree with this, but you might disagree with this, but in my opinion, Silva's a really good solo queue agent. Most of his abilities do not require too much coordination. I mean, sure, your teammates might ask you to like drone out here, or like use your arrow there or something, but it really doesn't require that much coordination with your team. You could just like drone out in an area and you'd be perfectly fine. Almost requires no team coordination, except, I mean, no, not really. I mean, your teammates might ask you to do some stuff, and of course, team coordination can help with these abilities. Like, let's say, like, I don't know, you're clearing front of site, so you might want to arrow back of site or things like that. So I'm gonna give him a 9 out of 10, and then as a solo queue agent. But he's like a really good like S tier agent in general. So he's gonna be going at the bottom of S tier. Next off, we have Viper. Now, Viper, in my opinion, isn't really that bad of a solo queue agent, but sometimes her ult can actually be like a bad idea to use. Like, I don't know, like your teammates might not want you to use your ultimate, and also you might molly your teammates on accident, and her walls and stuff like might damage, or her smoke cloud thingies might damage your teammates on accident, but not by that much and not by too much, so it shouldn't really be that bad. But in my opinion, Viper is like a really, I mean, she's not a bad agent, but she's in desperate need of a nerf, and she's definitely not a good agent at all. Like, she definitely needs like some sort of buff or rework. That's why I'm gonna put her at the top of C tier. Also, her solo queue score is probably around like a 7 out of 10. Just because, like, you know, her abilities, even though they can damage like your teammates, they don't really do that much damage. Next off, I have Reyna. Now, Reyna, again, requires absolutely no team coordination, and she's insanely good in solo queue because of her carry potential. So she's a 10 out of 10 solo queue score, obviously. But in my opinion, she's slightly outclassed by Jett as like an actual agent. So I'm going to put her in the middle of S tier. Wait. Yeah, middle of S tier. Alright, now we have Killjoy. Now, Killjoy doesn't really require that much team coordination, except that, you know, your teammates might ask you to put something there, like your turret flank, like maybe your teammates want you to save turret for like post plant or something. But in my opinion, her ultimate does require a decent amount of team coordination, because like, you know, like your teammates, like depending on the plan, it might be like better to ult somewhere else than to like ult where you're thinking. So for a solo queue agent, I'd give her around like a 6 to 7 out of 10. But she's a fairly mid-range agent, so she's gonna go in like the almost top of B tier. Finally, sorry, not finally. Then we have Skye. Now, in my opinion, Skye is almost as bad as Breach, but not as bad as Breach. Like, her flashes can, like, you know, obviously, like, can flash your teammates. Not only that, but a lot of her abilities require team coordination to, like, do effectively. Like, for example, your ulti can like, usually doesn't really get value unless you have some sort of plan to it, unless you coordinate something. And also, her dog sometimes, like, you know, you have to have a teammate, like, behind it. You can't do it, like, yourself. Like, sometimes, like, you need to have someone to protect the dog, or, you know, someone to, like, kill someone after they get baited by the dog, or something like that. Like, all of her abilities require a lot of coordination. And also, her heal, she can't heal herself. So again, she's a very teamwork centered agent. So I'd give her like around a 4 out of 10 for solo queue, but she's, in my opinion, a really bad agent. Like, she might be worse than Viper. She really needs some sort of rework, some sort of buff to her to make her more viable. But in my opinion, she's definitely the worst solo queue agent to play with. Next off, we have Yoru. Now, Yoru is like, he requires some team coordination to play effectively, but most of his abilities you could like do by yourself. Like, but for example, like you could just like TP and flash in there, but like it's better with team coordination. Like, unless, what I'm trying to say is that like, unless you're like a really like insanely good Yoru who like consistently pops off and consistently like make plays off flashes and stuff, and you're going to need team coordination. But like, if you're a really good Yoru, you probably don't really need that much team coordination, maybe except for the footsteps, which might actually be a detriment to your team sometimes. You might want to coordinate that. Overall, he gets a 5 out of 10 like solo queue score, and he's a middle of B tier agent. He's pretty average in my opinion. There's nothing really like good about him, but he's not really bad or anything. That's why he's gonna be a middle pick agent for solo queue. He's gonna go in the middle of B tier. Now, thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe, and watch one of my other videos, I guess. See you later.